You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the longest-running Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
We're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking to my ball. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins #1.
Hello, Dolphin fans, and welcome to another episode of Dolphins Talk. My name is Marissa Marino, and today I am joined by Cameron Wolfe, a national NFL reporter for NFL Network. You can follow him on socials at Cameron Wolfe. Cam, how are you feeling today?
I am feeling a little tired. Madrid takes a lot out of you, 10 hours each way, but I'm also feeling like this Dolphins team that folks like this to watch has a new spirit about them, and it makes me a little bit hopeful that maybe I'll have a few games in December in Miami that matter, or with Miami. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, definitely hopeful. This team has had a couple wins in a row now, and you just mentioned, we were talking about it, you were in Spain for this game, so boots on the ground, you were there on the field. I saw some of your interviews on my TV. You got a chance to speak to Devon Achane and kind of get a vibe from everyone. So with that being said, I mean, from your take, what was the vibe of this team as they were 3-7 entering this game?
They didn't feel like a 3-7 team. They were loose. They were having fun. We saw some of the videos after the win over the Bills with the guys in the car. and that's the vibe we got all week. It was just, hey, we're loose. Let's go play. We're enjoying Madrid. Why not? Why can't we make this run? And, you know, Bradley Chubb has used the phrase delusional confidence. And, you know, for a while, you're like, hey, yeah, it is delusional if you think you're actually going to make something this season. But they start to put the wins together. You start to look ahead at the schedule. You say the Jets and the Saints, your next couple of games, it could be 6-7, and like you just don't know what to do when you're in the mix at that stage, right? Like you got the Steelers on Monday Night Football, and you can see a path to where they can make it interesting. So I think they're playing with a level of looseness that you hadn't seen before. Still some things to clean up offensively, but you're definitely seeing that on the defensive ball side of the ball the last few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I mentioned you talking about Devon. I was really just peeled into that talk you had with him on the field because he has become such a pivotal part of this Miami Dolphins team. And, you know, he's been so fantastic. Next year is the final year of his contract. Do you think that Devon would accept a contract in and around what James Cook got in Buffalo? Or do you think he's going to kind of require a little bit more money than that based on what he's produced this past year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the offense is centered on Devon Achane now.
Yeah.
Like, it was already trending that way at the start of the year, but once Tyree got hurt, it became ultimately clear. Like everything is running through him. He's your number one playmaker, and he is mostly held up durably, which I know was a question for him coming out of college. Could he have the workload? Could he be a lead back with the size that he is, 170 something pounds, and he's held up really well. So that bodes well for you come contract time. He's a complete threat as a receiver and as a runner. So yeah, I'd imagine his agent, his team will look at that James Cook contract and say, that's where we got to start. Now, James has done it a few years. He's got a Pro Bowl under his belt. Maybe Achane gets his first one this year. But I definitely think year 3, you have to start thinking about, for a team perspective, can we get them locked up at what may be a team-friendly price, a year early, or do we wait till free agency year 4 or year 5 and potentially risk losing them?
Yeah, don't scare me, Cam. It's I can't handle that. That would be terrifying. Okay, so with that being said, before we just move on to this team in general, just to talk about your Spain trip, is there anything you took away from being around this Miami Dolphins organization? I know there's been a lot of talk about Mike McDaniel and does he have buy-in from players? And it doesn't have to be an answer on that, but what was your takeaway overall being around this team?
Well, first of all, I don't think the team has stopped fighting for Mike. I think that was a big question after the Cleveland game in particular, because you get embarrassed by a bad team. You're like, is this the end? Like, is this the end right now where guys don't want to show up? And they fought. They fought in the Buffalo game. They fought in the Commanders game. You could see that they still care, regardless of their record. That's probably the biggest thing that stood out. And so I don't think they have a lot of talent compared to previous years to be able to get out of these holes, but they do have the togetherness which I'm not sure we always thought they had last year. As far as the overall culture, I thought it was interesting that most of the folks I ran into in Madrid didn't know much about the NFL. It's a very new market in Spain to it. A lot of people didn't know what was going on, and so you're trying to educate a new base on it. And the Dolphins have really been steadfast in trying to be the market for the Spanish-speaking communities. And so a lot of Spain folks may have saw the Dolphins or been around the Dolphins for the first time of any NFL team, and they saw them win. And so that's their only memory. I walked out of the stadium or out of the onto the field right when the game ended, and I had one of the Spanish fans that was lingering over the balcony, and he said, "This is my first NFL game, and all I know is Miami Dolphins are number one." And a part of me is like, "Oh, I don't know if you want that thought the rest of your life. That's a lot of pain that I know Dolphins fans have had." But it's also that's their lasting imprint. So you have a whole another group of fans potentially following this team for the long haul.
Oh gosh, I mean, I feel for them. Oh gosh, we should be sending them like warnings, so like
Right.
black box label warnings. But there you go. Okay, so getting into this team currently, so we know that around back on Halloween, Chris Greer was let go from the team. Were you
Yep.
surprised at all by that move?
I was surprised on the timing. I was not surprised on the actual function of the move. Chris
Mhm.
has been here a long time. As we talked about, the team has decreased in talent, trading away a lot of guys that they invested in, they put money in, and the young players that he's drafted, particularly the last year, haven't really stepped up to fill that void in a way you feel comfortable with. And so that's your job as general manager. You know, you paid Tua a big contract that there seems to be some regret of how it's unfolded. You got guaranteed money going into next year. You know, you paid Tyreek a deal that he is going to be most likely released from at the end of this year. And you're in a situation now where your money's low and your talent's low. And that's usually a sign of when a general manager goes. That being said, mid-season GM changes don't happen often because there's not a lot of GM can do mid-season to fix a roster. Like, obviously at the trade deadline, you trade Jalen Phillips for a third-round pick, but that's not something that I don't think Chris wouldn't have done. He might have done that same exact deal. And so the move and the timing of when it was made probably was more surprising to me than the actual move itself.
Yeah, no, and I can see that. However, it's also you look at it and you're like, okay, this guy has been with the team in some capacity since
Yeah.
2000. So I think any day that he's still been there was maybe a day too long because it's been a 25 long years of no playoff wins for this Miami Dolphins team.
That's true.
So there was a report about a week back around the league for the feel of the Dolphins open general manager position now and whether it would be an attractive one for candidates. Do you agree that this would be an attractive position? And if Stephen Ross and ownership don't fire Mike McDaniel and force the new GM to work with him, do you think that would change how this job is viewed?
Well, one, it is the favorite phrase of NFL scouts. It is one of 32. It is always going to be popular because that's the dream of folks to get to the top. I do wonder how it would compete with some of these other jobs if they potentially opened up because of some of the things I just mentioned. They're a little tight in salary cap space. They don't have a huge influx of young talent, like young building block talent. And you're probably going to have some pressure from ownership to keep the quarterback and or the head coach for at least a year. And so if you're a GM, do you want to come into a clean situation or one with parts? Now, I imagine they would give this person security of probably a 5-year deal, a good bit of money to make them feel like they've got the longevity. But, you know, if I'm a GM, I would rather go in a clean situation where I know I can choose my head coach. I can choose my quarterback. I have talent that I can build from in a immense perspective. And so I wonder if it's sort of middle of the pack as far as potential openings. That being said, you got an owner who likes to spend money in Steve Ross. It should be an object of loss and a team that's been at least somewhat competitive. Now, do you break it all down to build it back up? Can you build off some of the pieces? That's the question there. But I'm very interested to see how much does Steve Ross really want to change versus have a different iteration of what they've done with current people in the front office moving into bigger roles.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, there's been talk of and reports about Stephen Ross's daughter and his son in law possibly being involved in decisions regarding the team. Have you heard that as well? And if you have, like, how big of a voice do you think they will have in upcoming decisions?
Yeah, that's yet to be seen. I think there's a lot of thought that as Steven gets older, who is going to take over. So I think everybody's trying to figure out, okay, what is that positioning? What is the hierarchy? I think that right now, Steven's very much in control of the ship. He has advisors, people he leans on, some family, some other people within the organization. But I ultimately think it's going to be based off of his feel, what his comfort is. Which is why I mentioned the Mike McDaniel Tua factor, because I know he really likes Mike. And I think that's important because you had your previous head coach in Brian Flores, who had a similar record as Mike in this stage, got let go a year earlier. And if you look at them apple to apple, they don't look like they're too dissimilar. But the big difference is Mike McDaniel was well-liked by ownership and people high in the organization, whereas Brian Flores, developed a little bit of a callous with some folks. So that relationship does matter. And that decision of whether or not I've got to keep a head coach and quarterback into 2026, I think will certainly have an impact on who they bring in for that job.
Yeah, much to the dislike of some of the Dolphin fans out there. I know your own Ian Rapoport has reported that Ross likes the McDaniel and doesn't really have intentions of moving him anywhere. So that is a pill that
he just signed a contract extension last year. Like we talked about contract extensions. He signed one the same time Tua did, the same time Jalen Waddle did. And so he's got a lot of guaranteed money. I know it's not on salary cap, so fans don't think about that money, but they've invested in him too. And so I think they're trying to figure out if there's a route to make it work.
Absolutely. Now, I think Anthony Weaver, this is a very interesting conversation because a lot of people thought that possibly before the Spain game, maybe McDaniel would be let go. Anthony Weaver would be given his opportunity to get like a little glimpse of what he would be like as a head coach. Last year, he had quite a few interviews for that position. But do you believe that the Dolphins' defensive struggles this season, now obviously not against the Bills, that was a superb game, but do you believe their struggles this season have hurt his chances of getting a head coaching position in this upcoming cycle?
I don't think so. I think, obviously record does play a factor, right? Like it's easier to hire a head coach from a team that won a Super Bowl than one that missed the playoffs. That being said, I think that teams are realizing that the head coach job is a leadership position primarily. And I think what would help Weaver is how he's handled himself in these moments of adversity. You hear him speak, and he speaks with a level of firmness, a level of confidence, even through struggle. I think those are traits for a head coach. And I remember when I was in Tennessee covering the Titans in 2018, I believe, 2017, they made a move to get rid of Mike Mularkey, who had made 2 straight playoff appearances, and brought in Mike Vrabel, who had the bottom 5 defense in the NFL with the Texans. And people at the time were like, your defense stinks. Why would you hire you as a head coach? They saw the leadership abilities. He became a really good hire for them. Then they let him go, and now he's a really good hire for New England. So a lot of times your leadership, your ability to run a franchise is different than your ability to call a defense. And we may find out in 5 years, Anthony Weaver's a better head coach than he ever was defensive coordinator.
Yep.
And I think that can certainly be the case.
I think some Dolphin fans were hoping to catch a glimpse of that, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So the Dolphins have got off to a 1-6 start this season, and they have gotten off to slow starts before under Mike McDaniel. Why do you think this team digs themselves a hole each year that is so tough to climb out of?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there was a thought in 2023, and I wonder if some of this is still lingering. They had the year they did, and they collapsed late. And everything was about how they performed in December and January. They built to last the year. They had a bunch of injuries. They didn't make it through the year. And then there is very much a focus in next training camp on finishing, getting to January. Maybe we take care of each other. Maybe we have a softer training camp, easier workload to help folks get through the year. And now there's the opposite issue. Now it's starting slow. So I do wonder if there was so much focus on winning a playoff game, getting to playing our best ball, being our healthiest in January, that you realize you can't just skatewalk into the start of the season. And I think this year they kind of tranced and got smacked by Colts, thinking they were more talented than they were. And I think that we see some of the gaps of their line play, their offensive line and defensive line play haven't been able to hold up to a lot of these teams. And when they lose some of the speed weapons on the outside, like a Tyreek Hill, when you lose a Darren Waller, those weapons, which were your greatest advantage, become minimized. And so now your bigger flaws are maximized. And it's like, man, we could survive a bad offensive line when we're throwing the ball to Tyreek and Waddle and Achane and all the folks there. But when we lose a piece or two, then our offensive line gets exposed even more. We're not able to get the big plays down the field. I think you're seeing some of that early in the season. And that's why I think you're seeing them now shift to a run-first offense, to leaning on Achane and backfield first, because they realize their personnel does not match up with their identity. They're no longer that finesse speed team that scored 70 against Denver. We now have our biggest skill having to run the ball on the ground.
Those were the good old days, Cam. I mean, as a Dolphin fan who hasn't seen much, that I just hang my hat on that right now. Okay, so Tua hasn't played the best this season. He's had some rocky moments at press conferences as well, which has been kind of off character for him. And in the offseason, Miami decides to move on, and they bend down some of the contract in an effort to move him and to make the contract move easier to do. Do you think there was a trade market for him in that scenario? To do that in the offseason?
It'd be tough to get a lot of value given that he's making nearly $50 million. Look, it's kind of similar situation, I'd imagine, to what the Falcons had with Kirk Cousins, and maybe even worse, because the Falcons only owed Kirk Cousins $10 million with his option, and they ended up paying it. And once they did it, fully guaranteed his contract, and now he's making $40 million this year. Nobody wanted to trade for him and give him that money. So they wanted the Falcons to eat most of the money, which I'd imagine that folks would want to do for the Dolphins. You're paying him 50, eat 20, eat 25 million. And if you're the Dolphins, if I'm gonna eat that, then I need a lot in value back. And I don't know a team's gonna do that either. And so I think that's a tough situation where you almost have to take it as a bridge quarterback year. I think there's going to be a few teams in that scenario. Kyler Murray in Arizona is one option. They could be looking to get rid of him. Geno Smith with the Raiders. There's going to be a lot of teams looking for these kind of mid-tier starting quarterbacks that need a fresh spot. And so I don't know that the demand will be super high for them to get a lot of value.
Yeah, fair enough on that. So Miami is 4-7 right now, and they have a bye week this week, so Dolphin fans can breathe easy and just focus on red zone. Then Saints, Jets, and Pittsburgh with an injured Aaron Rodgers, a Bengals team with a bad defense. Not sure yet if Joe Burrow will be playing in that game. Do you think it's possible this team gets to 8 wins and finishes near 500?
I think it's certainly possible. They should be 6-7, in a couple weeks. I think that the Steelers game against Monday Night Football might be the first time we're hey, this is something that matters for their playoff seeding. And so, okay, let's say I don't know if they win or lose that game. You start to look at the rest of their schedules. Why can't they win 2 more? They've already beaten the Bills. I don't know if they beat them twice, but how do you go over the top? What is that next step? Can you beat the Patriots? I think that a lot of these matchups at the end of the year is a December ball, sometimes turnovers, sometimes the sloppiness of the game. So can they go 8-9? Certainly. Would Dolphins fans be happy with that? I guess that's a better question for you. I've heard a lot of perspective on the tank versus not.
Yeah.
You want to win games if you're sure not a playoff spot as a fan. I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one, Cam, because I feel like it's just another middle of the road season where you have a middle of the road draft pick, and then it's just wah, the season was a wash. So we shall see what happens. A couple more questions and we'll get you out of here. I know you're a busy man. So what has surprised you more this year? How good the New England Patriots have been? I mean, one of the top teams in the league as far as records is concerned, or how much Buffalo has struggled at times?
I'd say New England is probably the bigger surprise for me because I did not foresee them making this big of a jump. I thought maybe last year they were 4-13. I thought maybe a good year for them getting a 7 or 8 wins. Become that middle of the pack team where you're not last in the division. You beat one or two teams and you take a step forward, and maybe in year 2 you can compete for a wild card spot. You got to think the Patriots right now are the favorites to win the AFC East.
I know.
Like, that's crazy. They're in position to be the 1 seed in the AFC. Now, they haven't played the toughest schedule. We're going to see down the stretch if they can keep it up. But the fact that Mike Vrabel's got this team playing the way they are, Drake May's playing MVP caliber ball, I think it's a scary thing for Dolphins fans for the rest of the league, because this was supposed to take a year or 2. And so that's probably a bigger surprise to me. Whereas Buffalo, we knew they had some holes on defense. We knew they hadn't got that weapon for Josh Allen. And that was the 2 big questions for them. And they're getting exposed in both areas at times. I think they'll figure it out. I think they'll be a playoff team. I think they may even still take New England for the AFC East. But they're not the automatic AFC championship battle against the Chiefs anymore, as they've been the last few years. I think they're going to have a tough challenge getting back, with the Ravens trying to be a resurgent team, with the Patriots there as well. And then obviously the Chiefs and the Broncos. I think that's going to be a tough ride for them. But definitely the Patriots is probably the biggest surprise.
Same here. The fact that they've cycled through Brady, have made their way back to a great quarterback, and we're still standing where we are is kind of depressing.
Yep. Some teams get all the luck.
Yeah, 100%. So last question for you. If you had to guess right now, is Mike McDaniel back as the head coach next season?
Yes, I do think that if I had to guess now, he will be. I think they finished the season 7 or 8 wins, and if they do, I think that's enough fight for them to see Mike McDaniel as a head coach. And I think they have some iteration of kind of a patchwork front office with a couple of key members who are already there having key roles, and then maybe bringing somebody from the outside and merging kind of a partnership, from the business side to the football side to the head coach with Mike McDaniel. And, somebody will have full control, and they'll make a decision on whether Mike McDaniel lasts beyond 2026 or not. So I'd imagine, if I was guessing, that's the route that happens. But if they get blown away by a surefire GM who says, only way I'm coming if you get rid of Mike, that probably would be the right route. I just don't know if there's that guy out there that they've identified yet.
That's fair. And I said that was my last question, but I do have to ask, what were your thoughts during the game when at the end Mike McDaniel chose to go for it on 4th down instead kicking that field goal? I just have to ask because it blew.
Yeah, I think it's who he is. The numbers actually said they thought it was a good call to go for it analytically, which I thought was interesting. I think the thought is field position is different getting the ball from the 35-yard line than it was getting the ball at the 20 or 25 before the new kickoff rule. And so I get it. Both teams were low scoring. I'm always going to be more aggressive. And so I actually maybe I'm a minority here. I had no problem with him going forward at that stage. I just didn't love the play call. I just felt like that wasn't the route to go. That's not the strength of your team. But the decision itself, worst case scenario, you got them pinned deep into your zone, and you probably can get a punt back, which is what ended up happening, or they went into OT. But I get it that obviously the 3 points there gets a safer route, gets you back to a situation where one stop gets you the win. But again, I think analytics will say something a little different than what conventional thought is.
So what I hear you saying is that you agree with me that Mike McDaniel needs to go. Got it. Not making great decisions. Heard.
That's what it sounded like, right?
Just kidding.
We'll see if he changes your mind by the end of the year.
Yeah, we shall see. Well, Cam, thank you so much for joining us. Where are you off to next?
I am off this weekend, trying to wear off the rest of this jet lag. Hopefully. Very tired. This has been a crazy last few days coming back. But then I am going to be on the road. So doing some TV tomorrow night or Friday night on Insiders, and then recharge, and then on the road. So I will be off on the road a lot the last 2 months of the year. But hopefully the Dolphins are good in the mix, and maybe I'll see them again in Pittsburgh for Monday Night Football.
We would love that for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Again, everyone, Cameron Wolfe, national NFL reporter for NFL Network. If you're not following him, do so on social media at Cameron Wolfe. Make sure you catch him on the Insiders, also on NFL Network. I believe that airs at 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern.
7 p.m. Eastern,
7 p.m.
7 to
Eastern.
8. So, yep, 6 to 7 Central Time.
Awesome. So make sure you catch him and Tom Pelissero, Ian Rappaport, all the guys talking football. Judy Batista, the female.
Yes.
We have to shout her out. She's amazing. All right, Cam. Well, thank you again. Everybody out there at Dolphins Talk, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And we hope that you all have a great rest of your day, and fins up.